We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
With the release of Maverick, the new Top Gun movie, a lot of questions abound about whether the US Navy is still the superior fighting force in the world. Well, we're very lucky to be joined by not only defense expert Dave Patson, but Dave is also a retired Air Force pilot, so brings something quite unique to the table. Dave, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be with you.
Now, I know we don't normally talk movies. We're usually talking defense, world geopolitics, and Biden's back and forth on the world stage. But I do have to ask, Dave, with the release of this movie, there's a lot of renewed interest in what's happening with the fighter jets, the F-14s, the F-18s. And I think what everybody wants to know is, does the U.S. still have air superiority?
The short answer is yes. And air superiority is kind of a vague term. But nonetheless, we have the finest air combat capability in the world.
I think it's important to figure out what everybody else kind of has. So in the movie Maverick, which I haven't seen yet, but will be shortly, there's a lot of talk of an unnamed enemy and that their capabilities are almost matching those of America. Now, how close are other countries in terms of fighter jets, fighter pilots, and air cover?
Well, I think that China, Russia, and they're the principal threats that we face, and their capability is formidable. There's no question about that. But the biggest thing that we have to our advantage is that we have the finest training there is to be, and we also have a very formidable capability in that we look at war in terms of combined arms. It's just not one fighter pilot out there doing his business, but we have the entire force that is focused on the threat and how to eliminate it.
So Top Gun, the movie, was about that training program or that process of training troops, pilots. And you say that America has the top training program in the world. What's the difference then? Why aren't China and Russia adopting a similar training program?
I don't know that they're not trying to do that, but the fact is that our emphasis on the right things at the right time, we bring up our pilots in early pilot training programs that are very intense and cover a great deal of situations where they'll find themselves. We train them to be thoughtful and to be unique and innovative, and that's one thing I don't think that China and Russia do. They have very top-down command and control, but our training programs are just second to none. And with new capabilities coming on, particularly for the Air Force, with the new trainer, the T-7 Red Tail, I think that we're just quite excellent in the way in which we train our pilots.
Well, that actually brings me on to two further questions, Dave. So there's a lot of talk in the movie about unmanned fighter jets. Now, you talk about how because the US doesn't have a very top-down command structure in this, and that the pilots are taught to be individuals and unique, and to very much think by the seat of their flight suits. Is that something that would be lost with unmanned fighter jets? And can unmanned fighter jets ever really compete in war against manned fighter jets?
Well, you're talking to a pilot. So I see the unmanned and aerial vehicles more like targets as opposed to capability. But eventually, I mean, this kind of a weapon system is going to come into its own with the artificial intelligence that's being developed. It certainly is going to be something that we're going to see in the very near future, I believe. But nonetheless, I think that the argument is between autonomous unmanned vehicles, which go about their business on their own, and those that are controlled in some sort of a formation by a mothership, if you will.
So we've seen a progression go from the F-14 to the F-18. Now you brought up a new plane, new fighter jet just now. What
Now
is
it's
that?
a trainer. It's the T-7A. It's going to replace the T-38.
And what makes that so special?
Well, it's new. It has a much more integrated avionics system. It is basically the avionics and mission systems that a pilot will see when they transition into a fighter. Flat screens, very modern and state-of-the-art kinds of mission systems and avionics.
And does it come included with Animal Crossing?
Yes, it does. It does, absolutely. And with really good brakes, so that, you know, if the animal does surprise them, like on the highway, not a problem.
That'll work. I mean, it's going to compete with the new Tesla eventually. So, Dave, how much of the Top Gun movie, the original Top Gun movie that you and I have both seen, how realistic was that when reality meets the road rubber of fiction?
Not particularly, particularly with modern warfare. I mean, there may be those rare occasions when a fighter will actually engage another in what we would consider a dogfight. But the fact is that with our long-range missiles, and if you're in a dogfight, something has happened that you had not anticipated. And it's one of the reasons why I believe that the Navy in the F-35C model of their F-35, they have a pod for a gun, and as opposed to an internally mounted gun. And I think that's because they don't anticipate engaging the enemy close in as much as they would at distances. You want to be able to kill the enemy at 100 miles. You don't want to have to be, see the whites of their eyes. And I think that's becoming more and more the goal of our combat aircraft.
So, Dave, final question for you. How do you think this movie will impact U.S. Navy reputation?
Oh, I think that it will, more than anything else, it'll help the Navy in their pilot recruitment. During, Top Gun 1, at many theaters, the Navy had recruiting booths in the lobby of the theater. But I have to remind everyone, when they talk about the Tactical Air Command and fighter pilots, there was never a movie in the Air Force called the Tactical Air Command. There was a movie with Jimmy Stewart called the Strategic Air Command.
Dave Patterson, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark. Always happy to be with you.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the country on the Radio American Network. I'd like to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Cadillac, Missouri on WATT 1240 AM and 106.1 FM. Thanks for being here. Coming up later in the show, we talk how gun laws imposed after a tragedy never really work. But up next, we're asking how schools can actually protect themselves. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.